And his webinar is entitled Revival of Ancient Language in Modern World. So we are very happy and honored to have you here, Mr. Mohit. And I would request to give a brief about yourself before we start, and then you can please go forward with your presentation. We are very thankful at Center for Global Languages that you accepted our invitation and you are conducting this webinar for us today. Thank you very much, and over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, ma'am, for giving this platform so that I can present something about Israel, about its language, because it's very rare in India. And about myself, like I completed my graduation and master's in German language from JNU. And in 2012 I completed it, and since then during that time I studied so many languages, for example Hebrew, Turkish, Greek, but later on I was able to continue with the Hebrew. And so since 2012 I have been working as a Hebrew and German language expert with various multinational companies, and right now I'm working with Wipro since 2021. And when I came across this opportunity, so I thought of because I also taught in Kendriya Vidyalaya for 1 year after completing my graduation. So at that time, and so it was my, it was my, how to say, desire to present something about the Hebrew. And as not so many people are aware about it, in terms of studying there, in terms of business, in terms of career opportunities, and why one should learn it. And but before going on that, I want to give a brief introduction about my topic. What I'm First, I'll start with the revival of Hebrew history, how it disappeared and how it got revived. And after that, I'll cover about the Israel, the brief general overview about Israel, what it is Israel is, and the career opportunity, career-wise, how you, and about the also about if you want to go to Israel and if you want to study, pursue higher education, what are the opportunities there, and in brief about how India is connected with the Jewish people. And so I'm going to cover all those things in this brief, in this presentation.
Wonderful, Mr. Mohit. I'm sure our audience who are going to be listening to you are really looking forward to it. And as you know, as you said, Hebrew is one of the ancient languages,
Yes.
and its revival in this modern world is really fantastic. And I think people are really looking forward.
Yes. Okay. So, ma'am, I'm going to start with the topic. The topic of my presentation is Hebrew, the revival of ancient language in modern world. And so first, I will go through the Hebrew language origin and history. So generally, the Hebrew language is a branch of Semitic languages. So if we look around the world, there are about the Semitic languages. So in that language branch, Arabic will fall under that branch. Also, the Ethiopian language and the Hebrew. And what are the Semitic languages? In Semitic languages, basically, the words are composed out of roots. For example, in Hebrew, it's there is a word called lilmod. Lilmod is formed out of la, ma, da. So when you want to form a word in Hebrew, it will form with these roots, not by adding prefix or suffix after or before these roots. It will be formed by adding vowels in between these roots. So I'll give further examples over later on. But before that, so we know that Hebrew is from the Semitic language. Hebrew is a Semitic language, and some other examples of Semitic languages are Arabic and Ethiopians in modern world. So Hebrew now, in this slide, I'm going to cover about the Hebrew language origin and history. So in ancient times, so what we today we see that Hebrew is spoken in the country called Israel. But before that, in ancient time, it was spoken in a vast area. It's like so in today's world, it's like Israel, Jordan, Palestine, Lebanon, Syria. It covered all these vast territory at that time. But what happened, like after the destruction of first temple of Judaism, that was in 587 BC. So all the Jewish got immigrated to different parts of the world. But basically, at that time, they immigrated to Babylon. So in today's world, it's Iraq. So that was the time when, and that was the time that marks the period from where the Hebrew started getting disappeared, and it started getting disappeared from day-to-day life, also from literary, but it became a part of worshiping. When it's between the worshipper and the god, it became a part of that. For example, in today's India, for example, Sanskrit, many of our ancient texts or religious ancient texts are written in Sanskrit. So we can see that Sanskrit is not spoken by people in day-to-day life. It's just in the area of like worshiping gods and all. So that was the case with the Hebrew language at that time. And after the destruction, but they try to revive this language after later on. But after the destruction of the second temple by the Romans, the Jewish people got immigrated to different parts across the world: Europe, Africa, even some came to India. And for example, you must have heard of the name of Cochin Jews. So at that time, they came to India after the destruction of the temple, and these Jewish people later on assimilated with a different part, as different culture of the world. So by that time, you can imagine that 70 AD, there was no one in the world who used to speak in Hebrew in day-to-day language, in day-to-day life. So with that, Hebrew got disappeared. But and after, it was remarkable, it is a remarkable, or like how to say, even the experts are surprised that after 2000 years, like you can say, like in 1881, there was one guy named Eliezer Ben Yehuda. He arrived in the Palestine. At that time, there was no Israel. So in 1881, he arrived because at that time, in Europe, Jews were suffering from discrimination. Anti-Semitism was there all the time. So the Jews decided, and there was an awakening there in their community. So they decided that we need to migrate to our homeland, and Jerusalem they considered their homeland, holy city. So they started migrating. So in migrating, there were so many people, and that in that so many people, there was one man named Eliezer Ben Yehuda. He took the responsibility to revive the Hebrew language, and it was not spoken there. People were speaking Arabic in that area at that time. So what Eliezer Ben Yehuda did, he started collecting Hebrew words. He started started forming grammatical structure from the biblical Hebrew, from Messianic Hebrew, and also from the influence of different languages. For example, Yiddish, Arabic, German, and Russian. So they started doing it. He started doing it, and by 1922, there were so many Hebrew-speaking people at that time in that area that British, who were governing that territory at that time, they declared the second language after Arabic as an official language there in that territory. So how he did it it was a very fascinating story. It's a kind of, if you'll say, he made a sacrifice, so much sacrifice actually at that time, because what the Hebrew was a holy language. So if you'll at that time, if you start speaking in Hebrew, people will see you and they'll just outcast you from their community, Jewish people, because they thought it's a way of communication towards the God, and it should not be used in a day-to-day life. Because day-to-day life. So what Ben Yehuda did, he used to disguise in a religious Orthodox religious Jew clothes, and then he started mingling people, and then later on, that's how he collected all those words and the grammatic structure. And the other thing he did, he not I won't say, but it's a kind of experiment. He experiment with his the only child, what his son. What he did, the day he born, so he didn't know any language except Hebrew. So he just test the viability of this Hebrew language project. So he started with his son, and later on, as I mentioned above, in 1922, it became a official language of British Mandate at that time. So that's how he did it, and he died around 1922 before it became an official language of that territory. So now I'll come to the Hebrew alphabets. As I mentioned above, that he revived it, he formed the grammatic structure. So all those theories, all those grammatic structure he mentioned, all those grammatic rules he prepared, in that, as there are 22 in general, there are 22 alphabets in Hebrew language. 5 letters have different forms when used at the end of the word. For example, these are mem, this one in which I'm putting my cursor, nun, in this, when there are 5 letters. So I have given the example of these 2 letters. So when they come at the end of the word, so they change their formation. It's like they changed, they become in a different form. And the other interesting fact about the Hebrew, it's written from right to left, just like Arabic, Urdu, or Ethiopian. And the other thing is, it's and they have so much, Arabic and Hebrew have so much similarities in between them. For example, if you say there are so many words in Hebrew which are borrowed from the Arabic. Sababa is an Arabic word. It means okay. So nowadays, if you'll go to Israel and if you will hear, oh, Sababa, Basira Gamor. So Sababa means it's okay. And for example, Walla, we must have heard in the Bollywood movies and all those things, Walla, Yalla. So in 70s, 80s now also. So in Hebrew, they accommodate these words from Arabic to Hebrew. Wala means wow, surprising form. Yalla means let's go. Yalla, let's go. And Hebrew also is a bidirectional language. What does it mean? For example, if Hebrew is written from right to left, but if there is an English word in between that which cannot be translated in Hebrew, and then it would be written in left to right, not right to left. So that's why Hebrew is also called a bidirectional language. Now I'm going to concentrate on the grammatical construction of the Hebrew language. For example, the helping verbs. As you can see, as you all can see in the screen, on the screen, that if I want to say my name is Mohit, so we use is. I am Mohit. I am. So in Hebrew, there is no concept of helping verb. Helping verb. Generally, it's a kind of, you'd say, silent. It is predetermined. Okay, if I'm saying I am Mohit, so I'll directly say Ani Mohit. Ani is I and Mohit. So you don't need to confuse, like, okay, there should be something if you want to compare with the English. So there is no helping verb scenario in the Hebrew language. When it comes to the sentence structure, it is more like English. if not in the terms of writing it from left to right or right, but in terms of subject, verb, object. So if I'm saying I love Dina, so in Hebrew, it's I'll say Ani Ohev Dina. So Ani is I, and Ohev is la ahov. It's to love. Is a verb, and Dina is a name. So in that sense, it is very similar to the English language. It's in the formation of the sentence. It's first come the subject, then verb, and then the object. So, but the most important thing which I'm going to tell you all about the roots, as I mentioned above, that Hebrew is a Semitic language, and in Hebrew it's all about the roots. So if there is any word formation, even a new word, it's all about the roots. It's originate from roots. So as I have mentioned here, that it's a combination of the roots. For example, lamed, lilmod is to learn, but it is a formation of three roots: la, lmd. So lamed, lmd, and based on these three roots, they will become verb, they will become adjective, it will become noun also, and so this is the importance. So there is no prefix suffix, but insertion of vowels in between roots create a new words in Hebrew. So I'll give further example, a list of this. For example, here, as you can see, there's a root called amen. Le amen. Generally, it's also to train. It's also in the form of artist. So you can see there's a root amen. There's so many word formation from amen with the help of these three roots. It's became oman. It means artist. It's became omanut. It's become art, and it's became omanam. It's became indeed truly, and it's also became a verb lehit amen, to train, to practice. And it's also become adverb amen. Amen, it's simple form. So as you can see, and it's become adjective also, ne'eman, loyal, faithful, devoted. So as you can see, Hebrew, if someone wants to learn Hebrew, if that person will concentrate on the roots, it will be much easier to grasp the nuisance of the Hebrew grammar. So this is all about a brief introduction about, I have just shared a brief idea how Hebrew as a language behaves, how one can have an idea what it is about. I know that sometimes people see a Hebrew language from right to left, and then they get confused. Oh my God, it's very difficult. It's not difficult. It's like there's a scientific aspect, scientific approach to learn this language, and if one is able to do that, it's very easy. It's not at all difficult to learn it. And now the next, I'm going to move toward the levels. For example, in German we have A1, A2, B1, B2. In Hebrew also we have levels, but in the way we say levels in Hebrew is totally different. It's not A1, A2, but in a Hebrew language perspective, it's there A1, A2. So I'm going to share its levels. So it started with the Aleph to upper advanced to wow. So for beginner, if it's like if you want to learn, if you want to say an introduction or something, so for that level Aleph is sufficient to understand the little bit grammatical structure, the sentence formation, and so if one completes the level Bet, one can be familiar with all those basic structure of the Hebrew language. So in Gimel, it's very important. Like in that sense, if you want to go to Israel and if you want to study there, Gimel is the level. If you want an entrance in the university there, you need to pass this level. And even if you don't know the Hebrew, if you go there, take an admission there, then also you need to complete this level. Then you will be able to register yourself in the university there. And then comes the level Dalit. And if you are at level Dalit, it means that you will be able to understand the lectures and the reading selections there at the university. Level Hay, and it is there to design to deepen your knowledge of Hebrew in very specialized field. It's like more advanced than the Dalit. And upper advanced is level Wow. It means that you are complete expertise. You get a complete with all in the terms of comprehension, reading, conversation, and the writing. So these are the 6th level in the Hebrew language, with starting with the Aleph and ending with the Vav. And the Gimel, if one wants to go to Israel and wants to pursue higher education, one needs to complete the level Gimel. Now, I'm going to give you a brief overview about the country, because I have spoken about the Hebrew language, but where is Israel? Where is that country, which is that country which revived that ancient language with handful of population? Now it is spoken around the world with 16 million population. After Israel, US is the largest Hebrew-speaking country, and so where is that? So you can see in that on the screen, it's surrounded. This is Israel. And it is, if you'll take example in India, it's little bigger than Goa, not more than that. It's little bigger than Goa. And it's surrounded by Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon from all the sides, and the Mediterranean Sea on the other side. And as we all know, that recently it was in the news because of the conflict going on between there was a conflict between Israel and the Hamas. So you can say there is a West Bank. So it's we all know about how Israel get this independence, how it got established in 1948, and how that conflict, which started with the establishment of Israel, is continue till now. And so Israel. So I'm not going to give you an overview about the historical perspective, but I'm going to give you an overview about the city, the Israel life, the Israel cities, and also the food, and also the tourist destination, and all those things. So first, I'm going to cover the Jerusalem. Jerusalem is considered the holy city for 3 religions: is Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. It is largest in terms of population. It's the largest city also, and it also in the terms of population, it is largest in Israel. And it has been a religious capital of Judaism, as I told you, during the first temple destruction, also the second temple destruction. Then it became a part of Christianity, and then it became a part of Islam. So it's very complex history, and the whole conflict is in and around at that area is all about that holy city, who's going to control it. That it has been since last 1,000 years. If you guys must have heard about the Crusades, how the Crusades from the conflict between the Christianity and the Islam that happened in the 11th century, 10th century. So it is that Jerusalem is like, if you compare with the India, it's like Varanasi. It's these 2 cities are the ancient habitable cities in the world. So this is all about the Jerusalem. And then second, the most important, or you will say the startup capital of Israel, is Tel Aviv. So Tel Aviv basically was nothing. There was an ancient port called There is actually, but in 1909 there was ancient port Jaffa, and around there was nothing, only desert. But when Jews started migrating to Israel in the 19th century, they established a city in 1909 on the outskirts of that port city, Jaffa. And there was nothing, only desert. But they, with their hard work, with their hard labor, now Tel Aviv is one of the most recognized, one of the most happening in terms of, and one of the most in terms of cultural exchange, and for the students, for the tourism, is one of the most happening city around the world. And now Tel Aviv and Jaffa are now become one. And if anyone wants to go there, please visit both Jaffa and Tel Aviv. They are beautiful. And now I'll come to the third city. It's Haifa. So Haifa is a hotspot. You can say it's a hotspot of Israel in terms of ethnicity. If the picture you are looking at, it's Baha'i Garden. You must have heard about the Baha'i Garden in India. It's in Delhi, the Lotus Temple. So there is one in Israel. And apart from Baha'i Garden, in ethnicity wise, Haifa is a mixture of Jewish and Arab. It's a 50-50, 50% population Jewish, 50% Arab. And since the formation of Israel, it's a very peaceful happening, and there's no conflict, and it's very beautiful city. I'll show you on the map. Where is it? It's there at the Mediterranean, and near that Haifa is Acre. Acre is famous during the time of the during 11th century. It is a famous port. All the Silk Route business was going through that port city in 10th century, 11th, 12th century at that time. So this is all about the major cities. And another important and the important important tourist destination, or you'll say the ecological hotspot in Israel, is Dead Sea. So you can see, you just go, if you don't know how to swim, you just go there and just lie down. You will not drown. You will not going to drown. So that's the Dead Sea, and it's very beautiful place to visit. To the serenity and all those things, it's very good. It's very beautiful. So, and now comes to the Israeli food platter. I would say, because I've been there, and I would say this was the most delicious part. It's like it's because the Israeli food is all the combination of Arabic, all the Jewish who came from the different European countries. They got mixed here, and now the food is being served there is a mixture of different culture. And if one is foodie and one wants to enjoy the food, Israel is the place to go, because you'll get all the aspect, all the food from different countries there, and they fusioned it with different cultures. So that was the best thing for me. I still miss that food there, of Israel. So now I'll come to the economic aspect of the Israel. So how, as we know, Israel is a startup country around the globe. And as per the global startup ecosystem ranking, it was 6th in the rank. And every nowadays, you must have heard that there is some startup companies are bought by Apple or Facebook, and it all originated in Israel. Even the first mobile phone, if you must have heard, it was first made in Israel. In the Intel chips and all those things, it was made in Israel. So there's a lot of opportunity in terms of business there. And if someone is there and they're studying there, and so he or she will get that exposure in Israel. And also, apart from that, Israel, I'm going to show you how, like in which field Israel is like leading around the globe. It's in artificial intelligence or blockchain, health and life sciences, cybersecurity, tech, and also in defense system. You must have heard like Israel is we are importing most of the weapon from the Israel. Is the second largest importer of weapons to India. And why? Because it's in, whether it's in technology or in artificial intelligence or whether cybersecurity, it's at the top of the game. So in India, there are so many in agricultural field, not to mention in agricultural field, it's a leading country around the globe. And in India, we must have heard that India is signing MOU with Israel in the field of agriculture, also in the field of technology, in defense sector, and so many things. So there are so many opportunities, and if you know Hebrew, there will be so many opportunities for everyone to grow. And now, in brief, I have just mentioned the importance of Hebrew in a globalized world. And as you know that Israel, as we know that all know that Israel is a very small nation, but it's the Israeli importance all over the globe is very big. It's very influential in defense, agriculture, in cybersecurity, technology. It's everywhere. It's very influential. And Israel, as I mentioned, Israel has the third largest number of companies listed on the NASDAQ exchange and is recognized worldwide at the cutting edge of industry, developing the technology of the future. Israel is giant in terms of when it comes to the innovation. All the big companies R&D are there in Israel, whether it's Google, IBM, all the R&Ds, Apple, all the R&D centers are there in Israel. So in light of this, Israel growing influence and prominence, fluency in Hebrew and modern secular Israeli culture is a profound asset for students' future. And now I'll move toward the next slide, and it's here. I have given my analysis how Hebrew can help one in career-wise, whether it's in government or whether it's in tourism sector, whether it's in business sector. So as we know that various departments and agencies in India and also all over the world, Hebrew is an important language and offers several scholarship and grants to students pursuing studies. In India, one can apply for Israeli government scholarship to study in various courses, especially in science field. So MHRD, with the help of Israeli government, every year they release a scholarship for postdoctorate to in the field of science domain. So if one wants to study, one wants to apply for the scholarship, one can apply, and there will be a process. There will be an interview at Delhi, and one can go. And if one gets selected, he or she will get 5-year, 2-year, and there is a short-term Hebrew language scholarship also for 1 month. And for that, one will study in the Haifa University about the Hebrew grammar, Hebrew language, Hebrew culture. And apart from that, nowadays, we have seen that Israel is a popular tourist destination, whether it's Jerusalem, whether it's Haifa, whether it's Tel Aviv, whether it's Dead Sea, or whether it's Eilat at the Red Sea. They all are the popular destination. And I forgot to mention Golan Heights. And it's famous for the winery and all the winery. And the Galilee, Sea of Galilee, where Jesus walked on that sea. And it's getting popular day by day. And from Indian perspective, it's so many Israelis are coming to India, visiting Goa, Himachal, and so nowadays so many Indians are also going there to visit, to explore, to in terms of business, tourism, and also in terms of study. So why to study in Israel? Because I'm saying to for study, because all the universities in Israel are topmost, one of the topmost university in the around the globe, whether it's Tel Aviv University, whether it's Hebrew University, or Technion, Israeli Institute of Technology, Bar Ilan, or IDC Herzliya. I have mentioned with that you can see the ranking there each and every year, whether it's 2021 or 2020, from different news reports. They have released uh, the ranking of those universities, and it's very surprising to me because it boasts world one of the topmost universities with that small area and all. It's like as I mentioned, third most innovative country in the world. Israel was ranked. So this is the reason why one need to pursue Hebrew language and go there, and even don't want to, but just to visit Israel. Now the next, in brief, I'm going to cover the connection between the India and the Judaism and the Israel. So how how we became so much connected to the Judaism or Israel. It's not since 1948, but before that, you can say 2,000 years back, when their second temple got destroyed. The first batch of Jews immigrant came to India in Cochin around 70 AD. And at that time, the ruler of Cochin granted them asylum and granted them a place to worship. So if somebody must have gone there, or if you go in near future to Cochin, there is still a synagogue. So, and it's very old synagogue, 400, 500-year old synagogues there. There's still a very small community living there in Cochin, because after 1948, most of the Jewish community migrated to Israel. And I'll give you my example. When I went to Israel, I met one community, Indian Jewish community from Maharashtra. So what happened, so they are settled, the Indian community majorly in Israel is settled in and around the South Israel. And they play cricket, they listen to Indian music. And when I started speaking to them in Hebrew, they told me, okay, please don't speak in Hebrew, start speaking to me in Hindi. So I was like, okay. So it was very good experience with them. And other important connection is Bnei Menashe. It's a tribal community living in Manipur and Mizoram. So what they considered themselves one of the lost tribe. The lost tribe means like after the destruction of Second Temple, when Jewish people got immigrated to different part of the world. So there were 12 tribes at that time. So different tribe went to different direction. So they considered themselves a part of one of that lost tribe. And another factor which is why we connected to them is because of the Baghdadi Jews. They came to India around 250 years ago from Iran, Afghanistan, and Iraq after they fled it from there. And the most surprising aspect is that when Israel got formed in 1948, in their constitution, they have reserved a special praise for only one country in India, a country in the world, and that is India. Because why they have mentioned it? Because if you see the history of Jewish, they were discriminated all over the place, all over the world, whether it's West Asia, whether it's Europe, whether it's US, all over the world they were discriminated. But in India, it didn't happen. Nothing happened, sort of discrimination since their arrival. And so that's why there is a special mention of India. Only India they have mentioned about this thing. And culturally, they share so many similarities. For example, I would give you an example. It's like when they marry, they break a glass, the mirror. So when in India, when some holy or marriage or something religious happens, we break a coconut. So in Israel also, that's a similarity between them. And the other thing is, what I have observed, that's my personal analysis, it's like if there's a festival, one of the most important festival in Jewish is Purim. It's happened in March. Why they celebrate Purim? It's because of the full moon. It's Purnima at that day. And during that time only, we celebrate Holi. And I have checked 20 years calendar, even 50 years calendar. There is hardly any difference of date. If Purim is on 12th of March, Holi will be on 13th. If Purim is on 10th, Holi will be on 9th. So that's the similarity is there with them culturally. And another aspect of that, when Jews got settled in India, so they got assimilated. So many of them reached the highest point in terms of career. Some became army general in armed forces. Some became excellent in arts. So, for example, I'm going to give you two examples. You must have recognized them. It's Lieutenant General Jack Faz Raphael Jacob. So he played an important role in 1971 war. He was the main person who negotiated with General Niazi, and because of him, 90,000 Pakistani soldiers surrendered in front of India. He was the main architect to win that war. And another famous personality is Nadira. Nadira is in 1950s. You must have, if you see the old movies, Nadira was one of the most prominent actress in the Bollywood at that time. And her name was Florence Ezekiel, not Nadira. So she changed it. And also there was one actress called Pramila, she was the first Miss India after the independence in 1947. And right now in today's world, Sanju Samson, not Sanju Samson, but she is very much, she got an expertise in Bharatnatyam, and also was also the head of CBFC and acted in so many Bollywood films. So they have contributed in India growth in the past, and they are doing it right now. And with that, I would like to conclude my presentation. Thank you so much.
Wonderful, Mr. Mohit. I think you gave a really fantastic overview of not just the language, but the country, the people, their traditions, the culture, the food, and why one should learn Hebrew, right? And the other thing which I would like to add here is, uh, as you mentioned, that this is a very ancient language. Actually, it
Yes.
is one of the premier classical languages which was revived, and today it is a living language
Yes.
of the world community, right? And how much potential there is for people who learn Hebrew today, and how it is important for not just connecting people, but culturally also,
Yes.
and how the unique historical phenomenon of Hebrew's revitalization, right, and modernization and secularization, actually, and its transformation into a spoken cultural medium today is indeed fantastic to know. And the opportunities that exist not only for students to explore, you know, this wonderful country, not just for the purpose of the language, but also, for it's this language. I would consider it as a No, it's sustaining communities worldwide,
Yes, yes, yes,
and that is so important in today's world. And of course, the so many opportunities that are there, whether it is for business, whether it is for studies, and definitely travel. So,
yes.
if I may say, you have really motivated me to visit Israel
Yes, ma'am, you
once
should.
things are back to normal, right?
Yes,
It indeed seems like such a multicultural country, and I feel that is wonderful. And yes, Israel is extremely popular, as you said, for technology, for business,
yes,
and it is a world. It's a global leader today in R&D,
yes,
especially. So, and as you said, these centers like Google, Apple, IBM, they are, it's the center for innovation. So
yes.
that's wonderful. And if you can stop the screening, we can get back to
Okay,
the where we can view you.
okay, okay. Wait. Okay. So now, ma'am,
Yeah,
it's okay. Okay.
great. So, yes, I wanted to know you. Wanted to ask you. Well, first of all, before I ask you any questions, I want to tell everyone that if you are interested in learning Hebrew, as of now, Center for Global Languages, Bengaluru City University offers a conversation course in Hebrew. But if the demand is there and if people are interested to learn this language further in much more depth, then we will be offering this certificate diploma courses also. As you mentioned, there are 6 levels, so we can definitely offer the first 3 levels to start with, and then take it forward. So that possibility is there, but then of course we need to know how many people would be interested to pursue this language. Which, but I feel, as you mentioned, it's a language which has a lot of potential in today's world, and a lot of opportunities are visible. So I think people should start
Yes.
thinking in that direction, and maybe think about learning Hebrew, which seems how okay. Now coming to question, how I can't say difficult. Any language for that matter, when you start with, is difficult. But how much time do you think a person will need to grasp the language?
Uh, I'll take my example when because during graduation days, I did the optional course for Hebrew.
Okay.
At that time, I was not aware about the potential of Hebrew.
Yes.
But when I started doing job, and I was thinking of not doing the corporate, but I also at that time I wanted to, because for since childhood, you will say Jerusalem was main attraction for me. I wanted to learn about it. That was my
Yes.
motivation to go there to see the Jerusalem, how is it, and how that as Israel as a country. So, and that crusade wars I have done, because I'm little bit
Yes.
into the history. So
Okay.
I wanted to. So that
Mm-hmm.
became a motivation when I was doing job in like after 2012. And when I started it, I started by myself.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I would say it's if you give because after completing my office, I used to give 3 to 4 hours
Mm-hmm.
to that
Okay.
language, because in India,
Yes.
except in JNU, there is any other institute. There is no institute actually.
Right.
So I used to meet my professor sometime there in JNU, Khurshid Imam sir,
Okay.
and with the help of his guidance, I started doing it by myself, and then I
Mm-hmm.
decided to go to Israel by myself to
Okay.
study. So I went to Tel Aviv
Fantastic.
University, and then I went there, and then uh, it's all about it's all about 2 to 3 hours. If you'll give
Yeah.
continuous, it's not motivation, but it's also about the discipline. If for 3 4 months, I have given only 3 4 months initially, and I
Yeah.
got the grasp. And
Mm-hmm.
after that, I got the scholarship from the Indian government, and then I went there. So
Okay.
yeah, so it's all
That's
about
good.
discipline and 3 to 4 hours,
Right.
and that's it.
Right. So, how difficult is the written Hebrew compared to the spoken?
Uh, in Hebrew, if you'll, it's not difficult, but the way it is written on paper and the way
Mm-hmm.
it is written on laptop or mobiles and all, it's totally different.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And on paper it's written in a cursive form, it's the
Right.
in the biblical form, if you'll say. And
Right.
in to adapt with the modern word, it came
Yeah.
up with the another set of letters. When
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
and yes, that's the difference. And in speaking, it's all, if you'll, it's more or similar to the Arabic, it like the way,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
in
Okay.
terms of speaking.
So, for someone who knows Arabic, it is, or someone who knows Hebrew, it is easy for them to learn the other language. Is that true?
I won't
Or will
say
it be, or will it be confusing?
it could be, actually, because the grammatic aspect, the grammatic structure of Hebrew is more similar to the European language, and
Okay.
it's rather than the Arabic language. But yeah,
Right.
for example, the way in Hindi we borrowed so many words from the Persians, from the
Yes.
Turkish, from the Arabic. So there
Mhm.
are so many words
Yeah.
from the Arabic. There are so many, and now they are living in that set of environment where
Right.
it's very common to borrow it from the Arabic language.
Arabic language. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Fantastic. I know that there is a consulate of Israel in Bangalore,
yes, yes.
uh, which we had a good fortunate of meeting once the consul general at that time,
Mhm.
who was, it was because of her that we introduced Hebrew conversation course
Okay, okay.
into our
Oh,
program. But now I feel, with this webinar, I'm sure people have become more aware how important this language is and how it could be very beneficial, not just for students, but also
mm,
for business and,
yes,
other opportunities, career wise, that is.
yes,
So I'm sure your this webinar has opened up a lot of ideas for students to pursue this language, and
yes.
we must really thank you, Mr. Mohit, for this wonderful
Thank you.
presentation. And I believe that it is going to yield a lot of queries for us also for this
I hope
course.
so.
And
Yeah.
yes, and we look forward to your continued support in promotion of the Hebrew language, right? As you said, JNU has this Hebrew
Yeah,
department,
certificate course. Yeah.
right? So in South India, we would like to be the first to offer a certificate course in Hebrew,
Yes.
and that would be, our contribution to the society. And hopefully, since Bangalore is a cosmopolitan city, and I'm sure there will be takers for this language, is what
Mm,
my feeling is. Because nowadays the general foreign languages like French, German,
mm,
Japanese, Spanish, they are
mm,
in demand, but I'm getting the feel that such language like Polish and Hebrew, these could be some of the, the
yes.
highlighters for the times to come, and they, I feel, would be in demand. So great. Would you like to uh, add anything
Uh,
to kind of sum up the whole thing?
Yes, ma'am. I would like to add 2 points.
Yeah.
As we have discussed, as you said, it's like in
Hmm.
terms of tourism, it's career wise, and if you
Yes.
want to pursue a higher education, Hebrew
Yeah.
is one of the most important, aspect to, if you want to go to Israel also. But the
Right.
other two important thing, religiously, for example, all the
Hmm.
Bible texts in ancient
Yes.
times were written in the Hebrew language. If one wants
Right.
to pursue it religiously also, one
Right.
can learn Hebrew language. And apart from that, linguistically, I would that's for me, that's very, like, I think it's very important point, as we know that it got revived in 1920s, and nowadays we see that so many the language diversity is so many languages are disappearing because people are not using it. For example, in South, the Kanchipuram is like the Sanskrit is the only place where there is a village where they speak Sanskrit. But if you want to revive any language, we can get an idea from the Hebrew language. We can follow their scientific methodology, not only just any ancient language like Sanskrit, but also the local languages, the local dialects. We can save it and we can work on it.
Yes. Great. That is, I feel, yeah, even I agree with you. Many languages just die, without even being known to the world sometimes,
Yes,
because
yes,
there are so many dialects, so many, and people don't even know or realize that such a
yes.
language existed. But yes, as you said, for us, Sanskrit is such
Uh,
language, one of those ancient languages,
yes,
mother of so many languages,
yes,
and which needs to be definitely revised. Of course, we have Sanskrit being offered in in schools and colleges as a subject,
yes, a
but it
subject.
is not being used in the modern world, like as a means of communication. It is
Yes,
not
yes, yes.
being done. So I'm hoping that someone who is listening to us, who is a Sanskrit expert,
Yeah,
could I think should start thinking how Hebrew was
yeah,
one such language which actually kind of disappeared and then
yes,
was revived,
yeah,
and today it is one of the most important languages so in the world. So I think definitely Sanskrit too can be revived. It is
yes,
that possibility is definitely there. So that's great. And before we end this webinar, I would like to profoundly thank you, Mr. Mohit, for making time to explain to us this wonderful for this presentation, where it was like going to Israel, and all the details that you provided, and the you gave such a wonderful in-depth analysis you did of the whole thing. It was really nice, and we really appreciate you making time for us. And I am sure people who are listening to us also have benefited today from this wonderful webinar. Thank you once again for being with us today, and we look forward to many more
thank
such
you so much for,
webinars and interaction with you. Okay.
yeah,
Thank you
thank you
very
so much,
much.
ma'am, for giving me this opportunity. And I
You're
hope that we
welcome.
will collaborate on many more things in future.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you all of who are listening to us.